Hi, and welcome to Brain Bites. Today's topic is directly connected to your health, lifestyle, and everyday choices as we explore a fascinating medical mystery. We're looking at why people are simultaneously becoming heavier and, well, weaker. It's this silent paradox unfolding right now, and honestly, it affects almost all of us. We usually think of aging and muscle loss as something that happens way later in life, right? But the actual data, it's telling a completely different and, frankly, pretty alarming story. So, to set the stage here, think about this. Human skeletal muscle naturally peaks when we're around 25 to 30 years old. After that, we just naturally start losing a tiny percentage of it every decade. But recent data is showing a staggering and rapid decline happening much earlier than anyone expected, specifically in India. We're facing this bizarre dual problem where people are gaining weight, but they're actively losing their physical strength. How in the world can those two things happen at the exact same time?
Well, get this. Back in 2020, InBody and Ipsos ran a massive study across 8 major Indian cities. We're talking Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai. The results? A shocking 71% of Indians aged 30 to 55 are already suffering from poor muscle health. Just let that sink in for a second. These aren't elderly folks in their 70s or 80s. This is the prime working class demographic. 7 out of 10 people who are out there building careers and raising families right now are walking around with dangerously weak muscles.
And here is where it gets crazy. A massive 73% of Indians are protein deficient, and over 90% are completely unaware of what their daily requirement even is. We take so much pride in eating home-cooked, supposedly healthy meals, yet we are directly starving a vital biological system you might not even realize you have. We're so quick to blame Western fast food for all our health issues, but the data is pretty clear. This deficiency is happening right inside our own traditional diets. See, most people mistakenly think muscles are just for gym goers, bodybuilders, or, just looking good in a t-shirt. But biologically, skeletal muscle acts as your body's primary sugar bank. It's literally your largest metabolic organ. When you eat, food gets broken down into glucose, which goes straight into your blood. And research shows that your muscles absorb nearly 80% of that blood glucose using insulin. So your muscles are quite literally the storage tanks for your blood sugar.
Okay, let's break down how this danger actually builds up. Step 1, when your muscle tank shrinks because of a poor diet and lack of exercise, you literally have less physical space to store that sugar. Step 2, your food intake stays the same. So the sugar just stays trapped in your bloodstream, which forces your pancreas into total overdrive trying to pump out extra insulin. And step 3, this constant overworking creates insulin resistance. That is the very first step toward type 2 diabetes. It perfectly explains the medical mystery of why even very thin individuals in India can develop severe diabetes.
Section 1. The Thin Fat Paradox. This brings us to a fascinating observation from the Lancet in 2004, known as the why paradox. This completely changes how we should look at weight. When researchers compared 2 doctors from that famous study, a British Caucasian doctor and an Indian doctor, both of them had the exact same normal body mass index, or BMI, of 22.3. On paper, perfectly healthy, but their internal body composition showed the Caucasian doctor had 9.1% body fat, while the Indian doctor had 21.2%. The Indian doctor had more than double the dangerous visceral fat around his internal organs. It just proves that BMI actively lies to us. You can look completely thin on the outside but be metabolically obese on the inside. And this thin fat phenotype leads straight to a condition called sarcopenic obesity. It is an incredibly dangerous medical combo where you suffer all the metabolic damage of gaining abdominal fat while simultaneously enduring the physical weakness of muscle loss. So your weight on the scale might be creeping up, but it's not muscle you're gaining, it's fat. Meanwhile, your vital muscle tissue is actually shrinking away. Section 2. The Great Indian Protein Myth. So why does our diet fail us, even when we assume our traditional, balanced vegetarian meals are keeping us healthy? We've been told our whole lives that our homemade food has everything we need. But the numbers? They reveal a pretty stark reality. The global average for protein consumption is 68 grams per person per day, but in India it's a mere 47 grams. The medical recommendation is about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight, so a 60-kilogram person needs around 48 to 60 grams a day, minimum. Yet we're falling way short. Plus, a huge chunk of our protein comes from cereals like wheat and rice, which have incomplete amino acid profiles and are just much harder for the body to absorb compared to things like dairy, eggs, or paneer.
Actually, we really need to shatter the great protein myth right now. So many people think, hey, I eat a bowl of dal every day, I'm getting enough protein. The truth? A standard bowl of everyday cooked watery dal is exactly that, mostly water. It provides only about 3 to 4 grams of protein. That means even if you're eating multiple bowls, you are barely making a dent in your 50-plus gram daily requirement. Surveys are showing that 84% of vegetarian diets and 65% of non-vegetarian diets in India are completely protein deficient. Quick pause here. If you're finding this explainer useful so far, take a second to like the explainer. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people. This is especially important because we urgently need to unlearn this dangerous myth that protein is only meant for gym goers or that it somehow inherently makes you fat. Protein is essential metabolic fuel for every single human being that is absolutely crucial as we cross the age of 40, and especially for women who face rapid muscle and bone density loss. If we trace the systemic root cause back to the 1960s Green Revolution, it gives us some incredible context. At that time, India was fighting literal hunger, so food policies rightfully prioritized pure calories over nutrition. The government subsidized cheap wheat and rice, and it saved millions from starvation, which was an absolute triumph. But the flip side is that it permanently hardwired the Indian plate to be incredibly carbohydrate-heavy. Vital protein sources like pulses, eggs, and milk remained comparatively expensive and less accessible. Basically, we learned how to fill our stomachs, but we never learned how to build our bodies. Section 3. A looming demographic liability. As this decades-long dietary trend collides with our rapidly aging bodies, we're watching a hidden personal health crisis escalate into a massive national emergency for our workforce. Think about it. What happens when an entire population ages without the physical strength to support itself? A terrifying, vicious cycle kicks in. When you have low muscle mass, your resting metabolic rate drops. Your body naturally burns fewer calories. That unused energy, it increases your body fat. Having excess fat and weak muscles inevitably leads to chronic fatigue. And when you're constantly tired, your physical activity drops even further. And guess what less activity causes? Yep, even more muscle decay. It's a complete downward spiral. The stakes here are just incredibly high. We proudly talk about being a young country with a demographic dividend. But as the current 30 to 55-year-old population ages over the next 15 to 20 years, this profound muscle weakness is going to lead to chronic diseases, frequent falls, broken bones, and skyrocketing healthcare costs. It literally threatens to turn our most productive young workforce into a physically dependent burden on the healthcare system. Section 4. Reversing the muscle loss. But here's the empowering news that should give us all some hope. Unlike a lot of medical conditions, muscle tissue can be actively rebuilt and strengthened at absolutely any age if we take coordinated action. It is literally never too late to start. We just need a multi-tiered approach. Step 1 is policy. Shifting government food distribution to focus on actual nutrition by subsidizing pulses and millets to make protein cheaper. Step 2 is clinical, updating checkups to measure waist circumference and muscle mass instead of relying on that dangerously flawed BMI scale. And step 3 is personal, making practical, immediate lifestyle changes right at home. On a personal level, your action plan can start today. First, don't eat all your protein in one sitting. Distribute it across every single meal. When you cook dal, make it significantly thicker and combine it with rice. That creates a much better complete amino acid profile. It's ancient wisdom that actually holds up to modern science. Make sure you're actively including dairy, eggs, soy, or paneer every day. And, crucially, start strength training 2 to 3 times a week. You really don't need a fancy gym. Simple bodyweight squats, push-ups, or using resistance bands at home are more than enough to give your muscles the resistance they need to grow. Muscle isn't just about fitness. Think of it as your ultimate old age insurance policy. The habits you build today are exactly what will keep you standing on your own 2 feet 20 years from now. So we really have to ask ourselves how we're going to build a stronger future, rather than just a heavier one. If you enjoyed this explainer, hit the like button, share it with others, and subscribe to Brain Bites for more valuable insights.